And we're back. What's going on, everybody? Hope everybody had a great All-Star break. I know I did, except for getting a little under the weather. Fortunately, not a COVID thing. But we're going to talk a little NBA tonight. I'm ready to get back after it. We had a great end. I won the last tournament, last Monster last week. I'll probably do a little video just talking a little bit about that because it was actually interesting. I posted it on our basically almost the exact same lineup in our chat and in my initial build. I made one pivot when we heard about the starting lineups changes. But basically with the exact same lineup, and even that one probably would have won, and it did win most single entries that it would have been in. So we had a really, really good finish. Obviously getting, some big 5-figure scores along with the 100K was really, really big. And we're ready to get after it. So without further ado, I do want to touch on a few things. Please like and subscribe, all that stuff. We are working on a deal to get our optimizer done by March 7th. And we are going to be incorporating sites from another major site. We'll get to all that stuff. So it should be done in the next couple of weeks. We also are making changes to the site. We have a new site manager, things like that. So there will be changes being made daily, and we are going to be improving this, and glad to have you guys along for the ride. Let's keep making some money. So let's get into it right away. I'm going to do something I don't usually do, and that's show my actual early builds. I usually do that just on our TrueDFS channel here, on our TrueDFS site. But I'm going to show like some hints at my early build, or at least one of my early builds on DK, and then I'll talk about some percentage of ownership on FanDuel. So I'm going to share my screen real quick, and we'll get into it. So basically, there's a lot of good stuff today. One thing that I like is, while there is some news we don't know for sure about, there's a lot that we do know, and it's the first game after the break, so you expect teams to have their best effort. They've had a long break. We can speculate on maybe some guys who were on minutes, a little bit lower minutes, maybe they get a few more. Guys who are trending upwards like Klay Thompson. I don't think there's any reason to run Klay out in general for like 34 minutes a game, but maybe he's playing 31 or 32 now. And I think they work him in slowly back to, but he hit 31, I think, a couple times right before the break. So things like that are important to keep in mind. But looking at early things, I'm just going to sort of quickly go through some thoughts through the early games here. I really like some of this Cleveland stuff. I think that you have a guy like Kevin Love at 6,200 is interesting, but I really like the 5,400 price on FanDuel. I'm spreading. I actually prefer Rondo to Goodwin, but I think that there's enough upside for Goodwin. I even think you could incorporate Osman as a potential play, depending on what happens with Markkanen today. They are going to need a ball handler out there, so just important to keep that in mind. And we want to try and attack that situation. On the run back, I do think Bagley's a legitimate good value play. I really like him quite a bit. I also like Cade, but his price is more suiting on FanDuel. So I wanted to probably get most of my exposure to him over there. I don't really love the rest of Detroit because they sort of tend to eat into each other. But I could see somebody like Jeremy Grant or Isaiah Stewart or even Sadiq Bey having a decent game, but not really in my initial plans. I really want to attack 2 games on this slate, and that's going to be Memphis, Minnesota, and Atlanta, Chicago. Now, it's hard to do because of the pricing. But with Atlanta, Trae Young, I think, is a tremendous play that's going to get maybe a little bit overlooked today. I love Ja also at the same price, so it gets a little tricky. But we do have value, or at least potential value. In addition to the guys we have here, we've got guys like Aaron Holiday. We've got guys, like I mentioned, Rondo already. Trenton Watford is a tremendous play. They just signed him to a 4-year extension. I expect him to be up there. He just doesn't happen to be in this exact lineup, but I do think that's a tremendous play. Love Cat in the game environment, even though Steven Adams is a very good defender. Cat just ends up on the perimeter more, is my guess. So I think we want to get exposure there. We want to, if you're not playing Cat, I would go Cat, Edwards, then Russell, probably on both sides, maybe a little more Russell on FanDuel because I love Jokic on FanDuel. We'll get to that in a little bit. But these are games with totals that we really want to attack. And on the Chicago side, everybody's priced up for Levine being out. So it makes Levine the most interesting play at 8,700, which is still not that exciting of a price. But in this game environment, I could see Levine putting up 50 plus very easily, and I want exposure to this situation. And I also want to touch on, he's not in this specific lineup of mine, and I do have him as one of my priorities on FanDuel. I think he's a great play on DraftKings as well. Devin Booker should get a bulk of the work. Whether you're playing, Booker, or you're going to go with the cheap guy in Aaron Holiday, I do think you want to try and get a ball handler from Phoenix. I also really like DeAndre Ayton. Doesn't happen to be in this specific lineup, but I think he's a really, really strong play. These are just some general spots I'm trying to attack. The Brooklyn situation is interesting. I worry about Brooklyn staying in this game. Boston's been really good. The defense has been really solid. I think you could make a good argument for Drummond, Curry, Thomas, Mills, everybody basically, Bruce Brown. At the bottom end, James Johnson is probably the best of these guys because he's so cheap over here, a little more expensive on FanDuel. But I think those are the guys you'd be looking at attacking early on. I just don't feel great about any of them. Mills would probably be my favorite on DK, Curry probably on FanDuel, but it's really like not that exciting considering they have all these guys out, but it's a tough defensive matchup for them. And they have enough bodies to where they can get by and have it sort of spread around. Somebody probably gets there, but I don't know enough to say exactly who that's going to be at this moment, unless we hear somebody else is out or the starting lineup changes or something like that. Anyway, let's talk a little bit more about a few other things. I love Jokic on both sides, but he's much more gettable on FanDuel. And I think it's going to leave him maybe a little lower owned, but it's such a great matchup. I think you want to get exposure on both sides. I also really like Will Barton in this pace game. It's not a natural guy to play all that often because Jokic is really taken over. But Will Barton against the Sacramento team could be one of those, 35 to 45 fantasy nights for him, just in that game environment that he's really, really good with. I also love the price on Sabonis, and I think Fox is very, very reasonable at 83. So I would be attacking both these guys and trying to get exposure. I'll probably be in the 20% range-ish on these guys overall today, depending on what else shakes out. Steph is a better play on FanDuel at 93. I understand you don't get the 3-point bonus, all the things, but coming off of that crazy All-Star performance, I think he's interesting. I am going to be leaning into Clay a lot in the second half of the year. I don't love that his price is going up. I still think people won't play him, and he's just a guy who can always go out there and make 8 threes in any amount of time, in 3 quarters or whatever. The other guys on the Portland side, I think Josh Hart and Anthony Simons are really interesting. Prefer Simons on FanDuel as well. And I prefer Hart on FanDuel as well because he can get the steals, blocks that get him there. But you can see he's been really, really good since getting over to Portland. And I think this kind of game environment does suit him. So although I worry about it staying close enough. So that's sort of a first look on DraftKings of what I'm doing. I'm going to jump over to my FanDuel Builder page. These are my early projected ownerships for everybody. It's going to be not my projected ownerships, my actual ownerships. And it's a little bit of a range. I tend to tighten it up as the day goes on and we find out more things. Guys, I'm going to be way ahead of the field on, though. Anthony Edwards going to be very low owned. I just love playing that guy at low ownership. I don't care if he fails me 4 out of 5 nights. When he gets to 65 at 1% or 2%, he's the guy who wins you tournaments. And I don't have the numbers in front of me, but I can tell you right now that guy has won more people tournaments who just took that shot just because of his upside and basically just said F everything else. We're just going to play him for the upside. So I love Anthony Edwards here. I mentioned guys like Towns and all that before. Watford is going to be hard to fade. I don't know what they're going to do entirely with the minutes in Portland, but you'd think with the 4-year extension, it's time to sort of unleash him. And maybe it's a little speculative, especially considering that he's going to be popular, but I really do like that play. Aaron Holiday is another one that's speculative, but again, could get that run without both Cam Payne and Chris Paul. The question is, though, do they just make it point Booker, which I think they might do. And I will probably end up the day below the field on Holiday, even though he's in a lot of my lineups early on, just because I think that there's a path for him not to get the run that maybe he's being projected for. Again, DeAndre Ayton, love that play. Love Steph Curry at 93. Love Cade Cunningham. Really love Kevin Love, regardless of whether Markkanen plays or not. I think you're going to see more Love in the second half of the season, especially if Detroit can keep that game fairly close. I think you're going to see Love down the stretch here. So I'm a really big fan of Love at this 5,400 price on FanDuel, more than I am the 62 on DK, but both are fine. Jokic, I will be overweight. It was very hard for me not to put like 75 to 85%, and maybe that's where I end up, but because it is so easy to get him in. But for right now, I am spreading out a little bit because I like a lot of these mid-tier plays. I mentioned the Booker, mid-up tier plays, I should say. I love Ja in that matchup. I love the runbacks from Edwards, Russell, and Towns. I don't want to do it all together, obviously, but I do think it's interesting. Love Barton over here. He's going to have some ownership as well. But again, be over the field on all the Minnesota guys. And that's Minnesota and Memphis guys. That's one thing I plan to do, along with the guys in Chicago and Atlanta, which unfortunately for Chicago is really only Levine. Atlanta, though, you've got Trae Young, you've got DeAndre Hunter, who are probably my favorite plays. I think you can play Herter over on FanDuel. And I think Jaylen Brown, just the price stands out a little bit. It's a little unfortunate because if he was 8,100, I would have just as much interest, and he probably would have, not half the ownership, but probably 30% less of the ownership than he will have. So that's just sort of a first look of what I'm doing today. I will be live with you guys at 6 Eastern time, so make sure to be there. And I also am going to be doing, I'll do my 5 and 5. I'll do all my my rundown of the wins, maybe today, maybe tomorrow. But again, big things happening with the site. We're really appreciative to all you guys who've been here. We got a lot of stuff done over the break, and it's going to start looking better and better, and we're going to have better information and optimizers and all that. So we appreciate you guys. Thanks so much for hanging with us. And we'll see you guys at 6 Eastern time. Good luck, everybody.